And, Prime Minister Abe, there are historical disputes in Asia that are a powerful source of tension and instability in this region. What responsibility do you and other leaders in Asia have to avoid inflammatory language or actions? Including further visits to the Asukuni shrine that could further exacerbate these tensions. Thank you. President Obama, well, Julie, we have been consistently preparing for the possibility that in fact, Geneva didn't deliver on its promise. I think you'll remember I was asked the day that the discussions had concluded what my hopes were, and I said, well, I'm not overly optimistic about the ability to deliver. And so what that means is that we have been preparing for the prospect that we're going to have to engage in further sanctions. Those are teed up. It requires some technical work, and it also requires coordination with other countries. So the fact that I haven't announced them yet doesn't mean that they haven't been prepared and teed up. At the point where they are ready to go, I guarantee UAP is going to be the first to know. Question, I'll hold you to that. President Obama, but I think it's important to emphasize that throughout this process, our goal has been to change Mr. Putin's calculus, that our preference is to resolve this issue diplomatically. That sanctions hurt Russia more than anybody else, but they're disruptive to the global economy and they're unnecessary if, in fact, Russia would recognize that the government in Kiev is prepared to have serious negotiations that preserve the rights of all Ukrainians. including Russian speakers, and is prepared to decentralize in ways that, originally, Mr. Putin said were of utmost importance to him. So far, at least, they have not chosen the wise path. And over the medium and long term, this is going to hurt Russia as much as it hurts Ukraine. Already you've seen a whole lot of money, a whole lot of foreign investors leaving Russia. Because they don't see this as a reliable place to invest. And Russia needs to reform its economy. And needs to diversify its economy because the rest of the world is moving further and further off the fossil fuels that are the primary way that Russia is able to bankroll itself. And the decisions right now that are being made in Ukraine will not help that process, it will hinder it. Now, I understand that additional sanctions may not change Mr. Putin's calculus. That's possible. How well they change his calculus in part. Depends on not just us applying sanctions but also the cooperation of other countries. And that's why there's got to be a lot of diplomatic spade work done at each phase of this process. And in discussions that I've had with Prime Minister Abe, in discussions that I had with my European counterparts, my consistent point has been there's some things the United States can do alone. But ultimately it's going to have to be a joint effort, a collective effort. And so while we've done our homework and we have things teed up, it's also important for us to make sure that we're in consultation with all these countries each and every time that we apply additional sanctions. Question: can I clarify? President Obama, sure. Question, are you saying that you have made a decision to apply further? Sanctions, but you just have to wait for a technical process to play out? Or are you saying you have not made the decision yet to levy those sanctions? President Obama, what I'm saying is that we have prepared for the possibility of applying additional sanctions. That there are a whole bunch of technical issues behind that there's always the possibility that Russia tomorrow or the next day reverses course and takes a different approach, which, by the way, would simply involve them stating clearly that they actually believe in what they said in Geneva. That they actually call on those who are holding buildings in the south and eastern Ukraine to get out of those buildings. That they are encouraged by the willingness of the Kiev government to follow through on amnesty. That they allow OSCE monitors in and that they support an election process where Ukrainians are able to make their own decisions. So it wouldn't require a radical shift. It would require the kinds of steps that on paper, at least they already agreed to as recently as last week. Do I think they're going to do that? So far, the evidence doesn't make me hopeful. And I think it's fair to say that, as we've said earlier this week, this is a matter of days and not weeks. Assuming that they do not follow through, we will follow through on what we said. Which is that there will be additional consequences on the Russians. Prime Minister Abe, as interpreted. First of all, my basic recognition of history is such that politicians have to have a sense of humility when it comes to history. Japan, 70 years ago in the war. When the war ended, to many persons, especially persons in Asia, we had inflicted tremendous damage and pain. And we have reflected on this, and we started our work after the war. For 70 years, as a peace-loving nation, we have steadily shed the past. And that is Japan, and that is the Japanese public. Ever since we were poor, we tried to contribute to Asia. We made our maximum efforts, even when we were poor. And many nations in Asia have evaluated highly Japan's work. In the Abe government, there is no change in stance compared to previous governments. Last year's end, I visited Yasukuni, and to those that have fought for the country and that have been wounded, that have passed away, I have prayed and prayed for the souls of such persons. That was the purpose of my visit to the shrine. And many leaders of the world share this common attitude, I believe. And at the same time, in Yasukuni Shrine there is a remembrance memorial called Chinraisha. And I visited this memorial. This has not been reported much, but in this memorial, those who have passed away as a result of the war, not only Japanese, but those from all over the world honored there. So I have visited this memorial so that never again people would suffer in wars. I renewed my resolve to create such a society and such a world, and I have renewed my pledge not to engage in war. And I have released a statement to that effect. With regard to my basic thinking, I will continue to explain and make efforts so that people will understand. I should like to accumulate such efforts. After the war, in order to create a democratic and free nation. We have made tremendous efforts and we have respected human rights and we have valued the rule of law not only in Japan, but in the world. We want to increase regions of this kind. And so, we would like to accumulate efforts toward this end, a peaceful and a prosperous world. In order to build such a world, we would like to contribute. And by so doing, I hope that many countries of the world would understand. Barack Obama. On Iran and PM Netanyahu's speech to Congress. Delivered March 3, 2015, White House, Washington, D. C. Well, this is going to be the first opportunity that I have to get an extensive debriefing from Secretary Carter. Who took a trip last week to Afghanistan and other parts of the region. He'll be giving me some impressions about how we're planning our drawdown and transition in Afghanistan. And talk about some other regional issues. One issue that we will be discussing is Iran. And obviously that's been a topic of great interest today, so let me just make a couple comments on that. I did not have a chance to watch Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech. I was on a video conference with our European partners with respect to Ukraine. I did have a chance to take a look at the transcript, and as far as I can tell, there was nothing new. The Prime Minister appropriately pointed out that the bond between the United States of America is unbreakable. And on that point I thoroughly agree. He also pointed out that Iran has been a dangerous regime and continues to engage in activities that are contrary to the interests of the United States, to Israel, and to the region. And on that, we agree. He also pointed out the fact that Iran has repeatedly threatened Israel. And engaged in the most venomous of anti-Semitic statements. And no one can dispute that. But on the core issue, which is how do we prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon? Which would make it far more dangerous and would give it scope for even greater action in the region. The Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives. So let's be clear about what exactly the central concern should be, both for the United States and for Israel. I've said since before I became president that one of my primary goals in foreign policy would be preventing Iran from getting nuclear weapons. And with the help of Congress and our international partners. We constructed an extraordinarily effective sanctions regime that pressured Iran to come to the table to negotiate in a serious fashion. They have now been negotiating over the last year, and during that period, Iran has, in fact, frozen its program, rolled back some of its most dangerous highly enriched uranium. And subjected itself to the kinds of verifications and inspections that we had not previously seen.